Hey, Sara. How's it going?
Not so great, you know. I've kind of been feeling like life is really meaningless and there's not really any point.
Really? Reminds me of someone I know, actually.
Really? Who's that?
Nietzsche.
Nietzsche? I don't know where I've heard that name.
Well, let me tell you about him.
Presenting Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche.
Friedrich Nietzsche was born in Germany on October 15, 1844. He grew up surrounded by women, his mother, sister, and grandma. He studied in an all-boys private school until he received a scholarship to attend a highly prestigious institute called Schulpforta. This school gave him important grounding in different languages and the opportunity to build relationships with upper-class society.
He later attended University of Bonn, where he studied philology, which is a combination of literature, linguistics, and history. He was strongly influenced by Arthur Schopenhauer, and his study of classical Greek philosophy greatly impacted his later works as a philosopher.
Nietzsche eventually taught philology at the University of Basel in Switzerland. He taught throughout his mid-20s, making him the youngest professor on record. He resigned from teaching in 1879 because of a nervous disorder.
He was enlisted in the Prussian army as a ward assistant, but he quit after suffering a traumatic experience. For the next decade, he lived in seclusion and moved from Switzerland to France to Italy. However, this was a highly productive period for him as a thinker and a writer.
Nietzsche published numerous major works of philosophy, which are still taught and studied to this day. The Birth of Tragedy, Thus Spoke Zarathustra, Twilight of the Idols, Beyond Good and Evil, and the Genealogy of Morals.
Nietzsche spent the last decade of his life in mental incapacitation. The reason for his insanity is still unknown. He died from pneumonia in Germany on August 25, 1900, at the age of 55. Nietzsche's major contributions to Western philosophy include the nihilism of contemporary Europe, the doctrine of the will to power, the conception of truth, and the Übermensch.
The nihilism of contemporary Europe. With the rise of science, the Christian worldview no longer held a prominent explanatory role in people's lives. Nietzsche captures this in his phrase, "God is dead." This is not meant literally, that first God lived and then God died. It is meant as a metaphor for the unraveling of absolute moral values in a post-Christianity Europe. Although he did not want to return to traditional Christianity, he felt that people needed to identify some source of meaning and value in their lives. His goal was to find a way out of the rejection of religious and moral principles through the creative and willful affirmation of life. This philosophy is contrasted by philosophers like Søren Kierkegaard, who stressed that God is beyond reason. Therefore, he rejected rationalism and encouraged a leap of faith towards the subjective truth, the goal of a purely Christian life. Nietzsche rejected Christianity because he saw it as a part of the master-slave mentality. He believed that it was fundamentally opposed to life because it diminished our individualism. It was his thinking that we should be the Lord of our own lives, that Christianity discourages our curiosity and natural skepticism. These ideas remain relevant today because we have moved away from a purely Christian state and have made ourselves the master of our own lives. We have learned to impose values and morals upon ourselves through various different ways, not only religious. Things like self-discovery, being true to oneself, and being empowered to determine a set of values that fits your own unique point of view.
The doctrine of the will to power. Nietzsche was most interested in the subliminal will to power, where people turn their will to power inward and pursue self-mastery rather than mastery over others. According to Nietzsche, everything is changing, and there is no such thing as a fixed being. The will to power is the fundamental engine for this change. He believed that the universe is primarily made up not of facts or things, but rather of wills, that the ego or soul is just grammatical fiction. What we call I is just a jumble of competing wills constantly struggling to overcome one another. Sigmund Freud, the founder of psychoanalysis, agreed that society plays an important role in shaping our self-conception and behavior. But he argued that we need established authorities in order to keep our animal natures at bay. Nietzsche, on the other hand, encourages us to reevaluate all our values, embrace change, and recognize that it is the only constant in the world. Compared to the ancient Greek thinkers who focused more on the past, Nietzsche felt it was important to focus on the present state of mind.
Another Nietzsche's major contribution is the conception of the truth. Nietzsche believes a healthy mind is flexible and recognizes that there are many different ways of considering a matter. There is no single truth, but rather many. He felt that if we should think there is only one right way of considering matter, that we become inflexible in our thinking. It was his belief that such intellectual inflexibility is a symptom of saying no to life. Some people argue that Nietzsche believes that there is such thing as truth, but there is no single correct perspective on it. That in order to get any reasonable idea of truth, we must look at it from multiple perspectives. Others argue that he believes the very idea of truth is a lie. The truth is simply a name given to the point of view of people who have the power to enforce their point of view. We can directly relate this idea to critical thinking. This is something that is very relevant today, especially with the rise of the social media and the internet as well. It is very necessary to apply our own critical thinking to the information we receive in order to evaluate claims and determine accuracy.
The Übermensch. Nietzsche believes that humanity is a transition, not a destination. We ceased to be animals when we taught ourselves to control our instincts for the sake of greater gains. By learning to resist some of our natural impulses, we have been able to forge civilizations, develop knowledge, and deepen ourselves spiritually. Rather than directing our will to power outward to dominate those around us, we have directed it inwardly and gained self-mastery. Nietzsche's concept of the Übermensch, translated as Superman, Beyond Man, or Overman, is the destination in which we started heading to when we first reined in our animal instincts. He is described as highly creative, courageous, powerful, and extremely rare, something to aspire to. This is an individual who strives to exist beyond conventional categories of good and evil, master and slave. The overman has self-mastery animals lack, but also the instincts and conscience humans lack. Man is a rope tied between beast and Übermensch, a rope over an abyss, which is great. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. This is relevant today because human beings are trying to innovate and be more creative in order to change the world. We are constantly looking for ways to develop ourselves and the world we live in. Similarly, we idolize celebrities and innovators, which is very similar to the Übermensch, something to strive for.
These are some quotes that are still relevant today. You may know them. What doesn't kill us makes us stronger. He who has a why to live can bear almost any how. And there are some that are not relevant today. Ah, woman, they make the highs higher and the lows more frequent. Here are also some people who influenced Nietzsche: Richard Dixon, Sigmund Freud, and Richard Strauss, and many more people in different fields.
I'm Nietzsche, Beeche.
Thank you for watching. I hope you learned more about Friedrich and Nietzsche.